Tēnā koutou katoa, kia ora and welcome to another Manawanui live stream. My name is Simon and today I am joined back again by the duo of Alan and Steph. We are continuing the conversation from last week covering the latest changes from DSS, but Alan will also be talking about the current situation with fuel prices and potential shortages. But I will hand it over to Alan to introduce herself again before we get stuck in with Steph. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Ellen Campbell. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at Manawanui. And once Steph has finished talking about DSS changes, I'll be, as Simon said, talking about the impact that the fuel price increases and shortages are having on you.
Stef speaking. Kia ora tātou. I'm going to cover off what you need to know about your tiers, how to find your tier in the portal, what that means for your relationship with Manawanui, as well as the pre-approval process. Hopefully by now you understand that there are going to be 4 tiers of support, and the DSS website does have way more detail on the support tiers if you wanted to have a look at those. The tier a person gets will depend on the total flexible funding they get, their needs, and their experience and confidence managing the funding. From a Manawanui perspective, your tier will be added to your portal tomorrow morning. So you'll be able to see your tier in the budgeting screen. Just a quick note, it is only available in the web version of the portal. It will not be available on the app. So the tier will be added to that budgeting screen, so that's where you'll be able to go and see it. And then for self-managing clients, the tier can be seen after creating an expense claim. For payroll clients, it's only visible after adding a pay component to the timesheet or an expense. If you log in the morning and it's not there, please just keep checking rather than calling us. We will be busy trying to get them uploaded as fast as we can. So the main difference across the tiers is the support the host is expected to give and when pre-approval must be sought. So I'm going to talk about the support first, then I'll take you through the pre-approval process. So in tier 1, it's deemed low support and the host is expected to check in just once a year. In tier 2, that's some support and the host is expected to check in every 6 months. If you're in tier 3, that requires some regular support and the host is expected to check in with you every 3 months. And if you end up in that top tier of tier 4, you're required to have frequent support and the host is expected to check in with you on a monthly basis. At Manawanui, we're still working through how we will check in with our customers as per that team framework, so just bear with us as we work through that. We will start to touch base with tier 4 and tier 3 customers to revisit their ISPs and ensure they've got good detail around the purpose of the funding and the purchases and supports it will be used for. Then we will work through our other customers and their tiers as the needs arise. We're also still working on how we will supply the purchasing data to your NASC before your next allocation is processed. My call out is probably that it is really important that you budget and spend well to ensure your allocation lasts the whole period, as there is no additional funding and you will not be able to use future allocations either. So let's talk about pre-approval and how to get it. First off, pre-approval is not required for support hours, so you do not need to do anything different in that space. Everyone will be required to get pre-approval for the following items, regardless of the cost: overseas travel, equipment, complementary therapies that are not publicly funded, repeat purchases of similar items before the expected life of the item has expired, And we as hosts will get more details on the finer details of those categories tomorrow when the new policies are published. So the next pre-approval process relates to your tier. So for one-off purchases that relate to your specific tier, if you're in tiers 1 to 3, you need to get pre-approval for purchases over $1,500. If you're in tier 4, you'll need to get pre-approval for purchases over $500. So how do you do that? You do it through the portal. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the remove the purchase support form and overseas travel form from the portal resources and replace it with the pre-approval form. Now, when you're making a claim, the purchase order form will still pop up, but you can skip that. And just a reminder, the pre-approval process and information is required by DSS. You will need to supply not only the details of the purchase and how it relates to your disability support, but also additional details such as any implications on your budget or contingency plans. Manawanui may need to have further conversations with you if it appears that your purchase does not align with either your funding plan, a disability support, or it might impact future supports. And we may request the assistance of NASCs if there are situations where this is unclear. Excuse me, bit croaky. So making purchases without a pre-approval or not supplying the full information will slow down reimbursements, as we will need to follow these up. So you'll fill out the pre-approval form, you'll send it to our CEC team, they will review it, they'll let you know it's been pre-approved, and then you'll be able to attach your pre-approval when you make your claim for your purchases. For purchases that do not require pre-approval, the person or agent managing the IF budget is responsible for ensuring that the budget is not overspent and that the purchases meet the requirements of disability support. And just a wee reminder that your NASC may make changes to your next allocation or tier if they believe the spending is not aligned with the purpose of your funding plan. So let's talk about from tomorrow onwards. So from tomorrow onwards, the fastest way to get answers about these things is to call the CEC or email the CEC. We just ask that you don't contact individual members of our team or your coaches. And if you do, then CEC will redirect them to the right person. We also do anticipate seeing increased volumes of inquiries. So to help us, you can always check the DSS website for information on tiers. You can have a read through our pre-approval form, as that does outline what you're going to need to send us. So do take some time to work through that form. Otherwise, we just ask that you're kind and patient with our CEC team as they navigate through these new ways of working. Over to you, Ellen.
Simon speaking. Sorry, before we go, there's been some really good questions come through that I think we should cover off before we change topics.
Sure.
So the first one is from Catherine. I think she must have missed it at the beginning, but can you please discuss how were the tiers determined and what was the criteria for how you got into each of the tiers?
So the tiers were determined. I'm just going to go back. Just get the official wording. So the tiers that you get will depend on the total flexible funding, your needs and experience or confidence of using your funding. That's what DSS told us for this initial round.
Simon speaking. Thank you, Steph. And then a wonderful question from Beth. She says, you have said that you are still going to work through how us as Manawanui customers will be checked in on according to our tiers. My biggest concern is that I will get a random phone call at some point, which I likely won't answer because of my disability. Do you have a mechanism of ensuring you are contacting people according to their communication preferences?
Steph speaking, that is definitely something that we will need to consider as we work through how we're going to reach out and check in with you. Great point.
Simon speaking. Thank you. And I just would, reassure you that we won't just randomly call you. Of course, we want to be productive with our time, and there will definitely be some prior communication about scheduling time or getting a time agreed in advance. So yeah, you don't need to worry about us sneaking up on you. And so those are the questions. Oh, no, there's one more, sorry. Beth has then said, for things that we don't have to get pre-approval for, but they're still saying we're supposed to be spending our IF in ways that meet our plan, how will this be worked out?
So we at Manawanui will be using your ISP as your plan in the interim until we get the My DSS funding plan from DSS. And if those plans are not up to date or lacking detail around the purpose of your funding, we will work through that with you. We might put you in touch with your coach and they can have a look at what that means. So essentially, we're going to create mini versions of a My DSS funding plan over the next wee while with our customers as we work through their purchases.
Simon speaking. Thanks, Steph. And I just missed the second part. But yes, Beth, you have it correct that, as Steph said earlier, if the NASC have concerns around your spending, if it doesn't relate to the purpose of your funding, then they could look at making adjustments to your next funding allocation. But yes. Oh, with that covered, over to you, Alan.
Ellen speaking. Thank you. There's a lot happening in DSS land, and there's also a lot happening with fuel in New Zealand and in the rest of the world. But I wanted to touch on this because there has been a rapid increase in fuel cost. There has also been some parts of the country where there has been a lack of access to fuel at times. And we're not sure when this particular situation will end or whether or not it will get worse and the impacts will increase. So first of all, I just wanted to let you know we sent out a survey request. I think it went out at 6 p.m. last night. So you might see in your emails that there is a request to respond to a survey. Obviously, it's not required, but the more information we can gather on the impacts to our customers, the better equipped we are to work with your funders or to come up with ways ourselves that we can support and advise you with the impact that that's having. We had approximately 600 responses to that survey just overnight, which I think really indicates how many people are feeling the impact and are concerned about increasing impact. And we have seen a few stories in the media recently, including one just today, I believe, about support workers not being able to afford to travel to support the people that they normally come and support, just because of the increased cost of travel. So I just wanted to go through, I guess, some of the thinking that we've been doing, because this might help you as an employer to think about how can you make sure that your support workers are still able to come and do their support visits, and you can get the support or the respite that you need. So I'm just going to share something that we've been working on. Apologies for the delay.
Simon speaking while Alan is getting that ready. I just see a comment from Sandra saying the survey went to her junk mail. So if you are missing that survey in your inbox, please check your junk.
Speaking, fantastic. Thank you for pointing that out. Yes, please, if you want to respond to the survey, please do check your junk mail. So, we're aware that the fuel price increases and supply disruption might impact your safety, essentially, and continuity of your essential supports. And I just wanted to make the point, because of the timing, if your funding comes from DSS, then the removal of the purchasing guidelines tomorrow means that you do have more flexibility to use the funding based on what you need. So you can prioritise what disability supports you pay for at any particular time. And just noting that for other funders, so for funders, so for people who have funding through a DHB, for instance, there have not been any changes to their policies that would affect how you respond to higher fuel costs. But if you have DSS funding, then you can now think about how do you make sure that your staff are actually able to come to work. So there's two different things that you might be needing to support in terms of staff travel. One is the cost of commuting to and from work. That is a cost that employers don't usually pay their staff for, but we're aware, of course, that in these unusual circumstances, the cost of commute might impact their ability to get to you. The other one is when they're actually travelling for the purposes of work. So, for instance, if they're driving you around, so if they're actually travelling to take you to a support, they're driving for work purposes rather than just from their home to work, then you also will need to find a way to make sure that they're not out of pocket for the additional costs of fuel. At Manawanui, one of the things that we're doing to help our staff to balance out that increasing cost for their commute is to allow them to work fewer days in the office so that overall their weekly commute cost doesn't increase. But if working remotely isn't an option for your staff, as it isn't for a lot of support workers, you might need to consider a travel allowance, for instance, to cover the difference between what their commute would normally cost them and what it's costing them now. This is entirely up to you as the employer. I just want to make that point. It is the employer's policy about how they will support staff travel costs. And in terms of using your funding, it is also your decision as the client or agent how you use that funding to support getting the essential supports that you need. So, mileage rates. And I'll come back to travel allowances a bit in the next couple of slides. But if we think about mileage rates, if you currently use a mileage rate to reimburse staff, then you might be using, for instance, one of the rates that the IRD recommends. Your staff will be noticing the increase because the IRD rate was set back in June 2025. Back then, the average price of 91 octane petrol was $2.55 per litre, and as of today, the average price of that fuel is $3.43 per litre. And we don't expect the IRD rates to change rapidly enough to respond. But the rate that you use to reimburse your employees can actually be set by you as the employer. So the IRD publishes rates that a lot of people utilise, but you do actually have discretion to offer a different rate based on specific circumstances. So if we think about what's changed recently, and we've just used, we don't want to make it really complicated, we've just used 91 octane, we've used an average kind of fuel efficiency of 10.9 kilometres per litre. What that means is that back when the IRD rate was published, the cost of fuel per kilometre was about 23 cents. Now the cost per kilometre is 31 cents. So the increase is 8 cents per kilometre. So that is, broadly speaking, an estimate of what is the actual real additional cost to people to travel. Obviously, if they're travelling a long way, that makes a significant difference. So what we've done in terms of how we reimburse staff, or how we will be reimbursing staff who travel for work, when they use their personal vehicle, we are going to be adding to the rate that we currently use, which is an IRD recommended rate of $1.09. based on the actual increase in fuel cost per kilometre. So this uses that same calculation. It's 91 octane. As of today, it is $3.43. We've taken fuel efficiency of 10.9 kilometres per litre, and that comes out as an increased fuel cost of 8 cents. So we're just going to be adding 8 cents to the mileage rate until the fuel price hits the next scenario. So when it hits 3.7, we'll be increasing it so that it's 11 cents higher than it normally is. So hopefully that makes sense. This isn't intended to be, I guess, a recommendation. This is just an idea. And I did want to give you some insight into how you could think about recognizing that additional cost for your employees if they're struggling to get to work. And recognizing that obviously this isn't going to help if you actually cannot get access to fuel. So if we do end up getting into a national situation where there is a restriction on fuel, as actually a few of the survey respondents said, we need support workers to be designated as critical or essential workers so that they can continue to have access to fuel. Our understanding is that DSS in particular is already aware of this need, and they're already working on making sure that support workers would be classified. The logistics of that could be really challenging, so I'm happy that they're at least thinking about it. And we're also keen to provide them with as much information as we can to inform how they respond and how they support people if there is sort of an urgent situation. So, if you are willing to fill out that survey, then we would appreciate it. The more information we can gather, the more we can inform DSS about how they can support our customers. And we're also very happy to share the same information with our other funders if it's helpful to them too. I think that's all from me. Are there any questions coming through?
Simon speaking. Thank you, Ellen. Not so much questions, but a few people commenting that the current inland revenue recommended mileage rate is $1.17 as opposed to $1.09. So if you wanted to go from that new number, then the same calculations apply.
Yeah, Ellen speaking. Sorry, I will just speak to that. The IRD has many different rates that they recommend based on what type of vehicle someone has, whether it's a diesel vehicle, whether it's 95, whether they're traveling less than 14,000 kilometres for work or greater than. And all of that means that there's a lot of complexity in trying to come up with anything. We use $1.09 because that is the rate that the IRD recommended. If you're not going to identify what type of vehicle someone's using and what the fuel efficiency of that vehicle is, and if you're not going to have logbooks. So it's just a rate that is in there, according to our CFO, our Chief Financial Officer, because that's who tells us what the rate should be every year. So $1.09 is what we use. But if you're thinking about your own employees, then I suggest that you use whatever rate you were providing them before these fuel increases. So whatever rate you agreed with them before, and then just think about what's increasing. So it's only the increase that you need to, that you would want to think about. I'd say need to. And if I also, sorry, I'll just go back to travel allowances. If you're considering travel allowances as well, then it would be important to make sure that you set the expectation that you're only trying to cover the difference, because otherwise you can get into difficult fringe benefit tax kind of area. And, we're not tax experts, but we try to avoid any kind of complication with fringe benefit tax for employees. So, and the IRD guidance is that as long as you are providing a travel allowance to cover the difference in what it would normally cost them to get to work and what it's costing them in any particular situation, then it's still a tax-free allowance.
Simon speaking. Thank you, Alan. Susie, your question around needing to maintain a logbook for the purpose of travel related to support work while they're on the job, you definitely still need to maintain a logbook. But Alan, can you provide some clarification around a logbook for travel to and from work?
If you're using a logbook, then you might also be reimbursing them on the basis of their fuel receipts. So you might already be reimbursing them according to the actual cost of fuel that they're paying at any particular time, in which case there's nothing that you need to adjust. But if you're reimbursing based on a mileage rate or distance that they've travelled according to a logbook, then that is when you would need to think about the difference. But if you are using a logbook already, keep using a logbook. Nothing changes in terms of how you record distance.
Simon speaking. Thank you. Let's go back to the previous conversation with Stef for a couple of questions that came through earlier. Sandy asked, what do we do if our ISP is woefully out of date?
Reach out to your coach and ask them if you can just sit down with them and have a look at it.
Simon speaking, thank you. And then Deborah said, for things we used to use our IF on, under $100 and they are regular purchases, do we need to get approval before we start doing this again?
It depends on whether, sorry, Steph speaking, if it falls into one of those categories, overseas travel, complementary therapies, equipment, then you would need to get pre-approval. If it doesn't, then no, just your normal process.
Simon speaking, thank you. And then the final question from Amy and Aroha, how do we make a claim in the portal from this week onwards? Will the process be any different?
Steph speaking, you can carry on making your claims as normal. If we require any further information from you because it is over a threshold for pre-approval or relates to one of those categories, we will reach out to you. But to speed up the process, you might like to just check whether you need pre-approval and do that first.
Simon speaking. Wonderful. I think that's a great place to wrap things up. If any other questions come through between now and the end, I'll review and reply via comment if I can. I just want to say a massive thank you to Alan and Steph for joining me today and sharing some very clear and helpful information. If anybody has any further questions, please reach out. Like Steph said, from tomorrow onwards, the best place to go is our CEC team via phone or email, and they will pass you on to the right person if they aren't. We are looking to have, or not looking, we definitely have representatives from DSS on a live stream in 2 weeks' time. So look out for that, and we'll start getting some questions and topics ready from the audience for our guests. So please help us prepare for that and get involved. And I will hand it over to Alan and then Steph for any final comments before we sign off.
No, Alan speaking. No final comments from me. I hope that you all have a good week. And just a reminder, we are going to take as supportive an approach as possible with these DSS changes. So if you're confused, it's fine. We're here to help you. We just ask that you also are supportive of us. Our staff are also trying to get their heads around the changes and how to support you to understand them. So, please be patient with all of us as we work through this together.
Steph speaking, yeah, nothing further from me.
Simon speaking. Wonderful. Thank you again, ladies. Thank you to everybody who tuned in and engaged in the comments. I hope you all have a lovely week and enjoy the long Easter weekend ahead. Ka kite.